Martial in his time, well, he was missed after his death. Pliny is sorry he's dead because he wrote a nice poem about Pliny. But after that, Martial becomes very obscure for centuries. The next we really notice him is the 3rd or 4th century AD, when epigrammatists, often bilingual ones, start finally imitating him. Other than that, it's as if he had never existed. Where Martial really takes off and finds his audience is round about the Renaissance, when education in Latin starts expanding, and peculiarly, Martial's epigrams become a teaching tool of sorts. It's judged that it'll be less scary for a beginner to start with a tiny poem of 2 lines and then move on to slightly less tiny ones of 4 and 6 than to launch into Caesar's Gallic War, for instance. Strange attitude by our standards, but it clearly worked. So everyone did Martial at school who went to school and did Latin, and Martial became part of the mindset of Western Europe. When people then wanted to write epigrams, for instance, as dedications for a book, they did them like Martial, after the style of Martial, and that's how Martial's style of epigram became synonymous with the word epigram, how we came to forget, as a civilization, that it had ever been done any other way. Martial then fell seriously out of favour, certainly in the English-speaking world, and I think this has happened by about 1800, and part of the reason perhaps has to do with the French. The British get it into their head that Martial is a favourite author of the French, and the French are the bad guys. So the British then go all out for Greek Epigram, which is noble and serene and not French at all, leaving Martial to those devious, sexy bastards over the channel. People just like Martial, in other words. And that's when Martial falls really out of favour. No one does anything with him for well over a century. He's recuperated in an apologetic way in the 1980s as an unexpected classic, and really interesting work on him doesn't really start until the tail end of the 1990s. So in many ways, he's a very new ancient author.